Welcome to the Elemental Body Fuel Podcast. I'm your host, Chrissy. This is where real healing meets real life, bringing together the physical body, the nervous system, the emotions, and the subconscious. Because lasting change doesn't come from pushing harder, it comes from learning how to work with your body, not against it. Here we talk about anxiety, stress, emotional healing, mindset, energy movement, and the patterns that shape how you show up every day. This work is grounded, intuitive, and empowering, focused on fueling your body, aligning your energy, and creating sustainable change from the inside out. If you're ready to feel more connected, more balanced, and more like yourself again, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello. And as you're hearing my voice right now, you might already notice a familiar sense of coming home. Welcome back to the Elemental Body Fuel Podcast. It has been quite a minute, and honestly, that pause was very intentional because growth doesn't always look like pushing harder or forcing momentum. Sometimes growth looks like integration, expansion, letting things settle, so that when you return, you're clearer, steadier, and oddly more motivated than before. So if you're new here, welcome. You're exactly where you need to be. And if you've been here since last season, I'm really glad that you're back. Last season, we focused heavily on metabolic health, honoring the body, hormones, nervous system regulation, and the intelligence of physiology. This season, we're upgrading everything. Not overnight, not magically, but in ways that actually last. Because habits that formed over years don't just disappear because we decided that they should, even though part of us really wishes that they would. And because becoming the best version of yourself isn't about trying harder. It's about understanding how you're wired. And as we move through this session, you'll probably hear me share a personal story or two along the way. Not because this podcast is about me. Trust me, I have my own hypnotherapist. I don't need to turn this into a personal therapy session. But because lived experiences is often the bridge between information and transformation. And as you listen today, you may begin to notice that understanding arriving in ways that feel both familiar and quietly new. Not forced, not dramatic, just subtle shifts in perspective that start connecting dots you may not have realized were related before. And that's exactly how this work tends to unfold. So let's set the foundation. And to recap, last season, we spent a lot of time talking about metabolic health. And that matters because the body matters, hormones matter, the nervous system matters. We covered all of that. And yet there's another layer underneath all of that. Because even hormones respond to perception. Even the nervous system responds to meaning. So this season, we're going one layer deeper. And you might be wondering, how do you go deeper than the system that already runs the body? Here's how. We're going to explore the subconscious mind, where belief systems, life scripts, and your internal knowns live, why patterns repeat, love patterns, anxiety loops, self-sabotage cycles, why willpower burns out, and why that battle is nearly impossible to win without addressing root cause. Why change feels hard even when you're genuinely, wow, that was a hard word for me to say. Let's try that again. Even when you genuinely want it. And how modalities like hypnosis, energy work, and awareness don't just motivate, they rewire. And as you listen today, you may already begin noticing small shifts in how you relate to your own patterns. Because this episode sets the foundation for everything that comes next. So let me start with this. If motivation worked, none of us would be struggling with the same things year after year after year. And when you really let that sink in, you might find yourself nodding. Because if willpower were enough, diets would stick. There'd be no more starting over on Monday. Anxiety would disappear once we understood it. Relationships wouldn't repeat the same emotional dynamics. Boundaries wouldn't collapse the moment pressure appeared. And self-sabotage wouldn't show up right when things finally started going well. You know what I'm talking about. And yet here we are. And it's important to be very clear about this. This isn't because you're weak. It's not because you lack discipline. It's not because you're doing it wrong, so to speak. It's because willpower is not the operating system. And as you hear that, some part of you may already feel relief. Here's the truth most people never hear, and even fewer truly understand. The conscious mind makes decisions, but the subconscious mind runs the show. The conscious mind is the part of you listening to me right now. It's your logic, your reasoning, awareness, choice, your willpower. It's the voice that says, I'm going to eat better. I need to calm down. Or I deserve healthier relationships. I'm done repeating this pattern. Don't get me wrong, that voice is real. It's very real. And it means what it says. But the subconscious mind isn't focused on your goals. It's focused on survival, predictability, and guess what? Safety. Your safety. And when those priorities don't align with your conscious intentions, the subconscious always wins. It's just the way it is. Why deciding doesn't always work. This is a subject that I really want to touch on. See, the subconscious stores emotional memory, conditioning, learned responses, identity, beliefs formed from before you even had a language. And here's the key that most people miss. The subconscious doesn't evaluate change as good or bad. What? Yeah, that's right. It evaluates change as known versus unknown. And to the subconscious, unknown equals potential danger. So when you decide to change your body, your habits, your relationships, your conscious mind is making a logical choice, but the subconscious mind, it's the one quietly asking, is this familiar? Or does this disrupt what has kept us safe for so long? If the change threatens your emotional baseline, if it changes your identity, if it removes coping strategies that once protected you and made you feel safe, then your subconscious mind is going to intervene. It's going to swoop in there like the Dark Knight. Quietly, automatically, in ways that feel like you. And this is going to show up in cravings, perhaps overthinking, maybe anxiety, possibly procrastination, self-doubt. And because this happens beneath awareness, people often ask, what is wrong with me? Have you ever done that? Have you ever wondered what's wrong with me? Well, I'm here to tell you that nothing is wrong. This is homeostasis, the system restoring what is familiar to you. Not what's healthy, not what's aligned, what is known. And once you start noticing this, you see it everywhere. Let me give you some real life pattern examples. And once you start noticing this, you see it everywhere. So when we're talking about diets and health, what happens is weight loss starts working. The body feels unfamiliar, cravings begin to spike. Have you ever noticed that? This isn't because you failed. It's not because you're weak, but it's because your subconscious is saying this isn't normal yet. It shows up with anxiety as well. Anxiety isn't a flaw, and that's super important to realize. Anxiety is learned nervous system responses. You can tell yourself that you're safe, but anxiety doesn't live in logic. It lives in the body. With your relationships, people don't choose partners logically. How strange is that? We're actually choosing them based on familiar emotional dynamics. That spark that you feel, you know the one I'm talking about. It's often recognition, not compatibility. And when we're talking about boundaries, boundaries collapse when they threaten subconscious safety. If love once required compliance, your body will override your boundary before your mouth even finishes the sentence. Self-sabotage isn't self-hate. It's the subconscious pulling you back into a known identity. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. I need you to remember that. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. There will be a quiz at the end of this podcast. I'm totally kidding. But let's talk about hypnosis. Enter into stage hypnosis versus clinical hypnosis just for a second, because I get these burning questions about stage hypnotism all the time when I'm working with clients. And as you hear this, you may notice some old assumptions gently loosening. And because I get asked this all the time, are you going to make me bark like a dog? Will I cluck like a chicken? Am I going to lose control? Listen carefully. I will not make you bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken unless you consciously, enthusiastically want to. And even then would probably explore why that feels interesting. So let's clarify. Stage hypnosis is entertainment, pure entertainment. It relies on volunteers, social expectation, and people who want to play. No one on a stage is doing something that violates their values. If they felt unsafe, then snap right out of it. Because hypnosis does not override who you are. Clinical hypnosis is the opposite. It's very quiet, very internal, and very intentional. You're not unconscious, you're not being controlled, you're actually more focused than ever before. Hypnosis also isn't sleep. It's simply focused attention, where the analytical mind softens and the subconscious becomes accessible. You are always aware, you can always speak, you can always stop, because you are never powerless. So let's talk about what hypnosis actually is then. Again, going back to focused attention, reduced critical filtering, repatterning emotional responses, teaching the body safety. It's not ever about forcing change. It's about accessing the part of you that already controls change. You see, most beliefs were installed between the ages of 0 to 9 when the brain operated in theta, the same state used in hypnosis. You weren't analyzing, you were simply absorbing. You absorbed things like what love costs, what safety requires, how approval works, when to stay quiet, when to stay alert, when to disconnect. Those became your life scripts. And as adults, we try to rewrite them with logic, with reasoning. But the subconscious doesn't respond to those commands. It responds to experience. And it speaks in symbols, sensations, metaphors, and emotion. That's why hypnosis works when willpower doesn't. You're not yelling instructions at the mind. We're simply allowing the subconscious to communicate in its own language. A tight chest becomes information. An image becomes a clue. And a story becomes a bridge. And when the root is addressed, the behavior no longer has a job. So let's sprinkle just a tiny little bit of woo dust on this. When the subconscious feels safe, your intuition sharpens, energy shifts, patterns loosen. This is where hypnosis overlaps with somatic energy work, energy healing, and past life regression. Not as fantasy, but as symbolic healing. Because sometimes change doesn't come from understanding. Sometimes it comes from remembering. So this season, we're not fixing you, we're decoding you. Each week, we'll ask, where did this pattern start? And how do we rewrite it? We'll explore relationships, anxiety, boundaries, addiction, past life regression, energy healing, and intuition through the lens of safety, subconscious patterning, and nervous system regulation. So if you've ever wondered, what's wrong with me? Let me say this clearly. Once again, nothing is wrong with you. You are definitely not broken. You're patterned. And patterns can change. Not through force, but through awareness, safety, and of course, the right tools. So this season, we're going beneath the surface because real change doesn't happen when we try harder. It happens where we finally understand it. So if you liked this episode and are excited for what is next, go ahead and like it, subscribe, because there is more coming your way. So thank you for listening with your ears, and I will see you next week on the Elemental Body Fuel Podcast.